Greetings, the difficulty level of this video is easy. In late 2014, I wrote a very well-known article on The Futurist titled The Education Disruption 2015. And the reason the year 2015 was chosen, and the article was written before 2015, was because that was when the internal trends, the underlying trends that very few people keep track of, suddenly showed that there was an irreversible disruption of the higher education and lower education sectors of the Western world. And why was this trend irreversible? Because the quality and quantity of online alternatives had reached critical mass, and there was enough capital and enough infrastructure enabling the creation of a whole host of educational alternatives that were very low cost or even free. And many methods of learning that were not suited for the classroom found a more receptive environment online. And even I have videos on this channel that enable a person to learn a relatively complicated subject in a pretty short time by deconstructing the process of knowledge intake and teaching a student how to focus on the important parts for a holistic understanding and not get entangled in the peripheries of that subject. But the education disruption began in 2015, and that is when the disruption reached the point of no return. Much like my very famous prediction about the disruption in oil prices, the educational sector, both higher ed and lower ed, is under very much the same forces as OPEC was before the collapse in oil prices. Universities and schools in the United States are delivering a product of lower and lower quality for a higher and higher price, and this always attracts capital. This is when that sector is taking on the atom, the accelerating technomic medium, head on and kind of daring entrepreneurs to come in with alternatives. And I have other videos on this channel that describe how imminent this disruption is, simply because when you have something like Netflix or Hulu for $72 a year or $96 a year or some trivial amount like that, why does a university cost 500 to 1,000 times as much? So today we're going to look at some data that has come forth that tells us where this disruption is. This is an article from the TaxProf blog, and the article is titled How the Discounts on Private University Tuition Are at an All-Time High. So if you look at this chart, you see the blue line, which is all undergraduates, and the maroon line, which is first-time undergraduates. And obviously the maroon line has a higher discount because you have to lure students in with a greater discount, and once they're halfway or three-quarters of the way through their degree, they're not going to drop out, so you can take away their scholarships and their discounts and foist more cost onto them. Now, one sidebar, this is already an absurd situation that people have been accustomed to for a very long time. Discriminatory pricing based on the income of the customer. If you went to an auto dealership and you were told that the price of the car is not some fixed dollar amount, but it is some percentage of your income, the car costs 30% of your income, you would find that absurd. What if the person before you paid much less? That would be unfair. And that example shows you how absurd it is, but with universities somehow this type of discriminatory pricing based on income is normal because they've done so much marketing around how what the university delivers is so irreplaceable and how a scholarship is such a prestigious thing to receive that discriminatory pricing is in fact the status quo of university tuition. And that is already strange and shows how the whole sector is not resonant with either free market principles or the first principles of technology and economics. But the discount rate, as you can see from my cursor, is rising. A decade ago, it was about 10 points lower than it is now. And first-time students are 53.9%, and even existing students are 48.1%. That is a huge discount. How high will it go? Remember, the university sector in the United States has delayed its imminent disruption simply because of a large number of foreign students paying full ticket price, mostly from China. 800,000 Chinese students paying full ticket price has injected a lot of money into the sector and delayed the reckoning. Now, the disruption won't be quite as dramatic as a lot of conservative Republicans seem to think it will be, because the university sector in the West is the lifeblood of the leftist establishment. This is where they get a lot of their activists, where they get a lot of their ideological output, and this is how they cycle a lot of money to various high-ranking leftists. So they will not let this sector go under. Now that money printing has become a source of government spending, the left, which is in power, will absolutely not let universities contract and will keep pumping more and more money into them. And a lot of ridiculous conservative Republicans will in fact help them do that, because conservatism in the United States is about preserving a status quo, including a status quo that hates conservatives, and ultimately surrendering to the leftist status quo. And I'll have videos about that as well. But conservatism in the US is all about surrendering and then demanding that the surrender be considered respectable, and therefore conservatism is not an ideology for anyone who dislikes losing, and that's why I'm not a Republican at all. But I digress. The upward creep of this number certainly makes this clash between the unstoppable force and the immovable object more intensive. The government will subsidize universities more and more and more, and universities will discount tuition more and more, but market forces are continuing to hack away when the same or higher quality of education is available for little to no price, and more educators are producing more and more output. I've started this YouTube channel very recently, just in 2021, and a lot of people will learn a lot of things from my channel, and there are hundreds of other sources out there of various types. I am someone who teaches at Stanford as well as an instructor from time to time, and I teach subjects about disruption within the university setting. Therefore, this clash between two incredibly powerful forces is going to be very interesting to watch. This data is something we're going to keep tracking on this channel, because can it get to 60%, 65, 70%? That's when it will get very interesting. Now, if you found this content informative, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much for watching.